If you're a custodial supervisor at a local high school, you know that cleanliness is key, and that the best place to get cleaning supplies is from Grainger. Grainger helps you stay fully stocked on the products you trust, from paper towels and disinfectants to floor scrubbers. Plus, you can rely on Grainger for easy reordering, so you never run out of what you need. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
When she got the call about the prize that she had won, Eleanor McGuire was almost offended. The year was 2000. McGuire was a neuroscientist who had recently published an interesting paper. Maybe you've heard about it. In London, cab drivers have to pass a grueling exam to get a license. It tests their knowledge of every single road in the city. Every crooked lane, every obscure byway, every paved-over cowpath dating back hundreds of years. 25,000 streets. McGuire wondered if this changed the driver's brain somehow, particularly the hippocampus, a place associated with memory. So she scanned the cabbie's brains, and sure enough, their hippocampi were far larger than normal, like they were on steroids. It was a fascinating discovery. And, as McGuire found out that day in 2000, it won her a prize. But it seemed more like a booby prize. The award was called the Ig Nobel Prize, a cheeky reference to the regular Nobels. As its motto says, the goal of the Ig Nobel Prize is to highlight research that first makes you laugh, then makes you think. It's somewhat controversial. Although it focuses on the absurd side of science, it often touches on surprisingly important topics. But it also sometimes touches a nerve with winners. Not everyone appreciates the joke. So today, we are going to explore the Ig Nobels and what makes them unique. Ultimately, Eleanor McGuire turned down her prize in 2000. But over the years, the Ig Nobels have become a fixture in the scientific community, a bizarro counterpart of the sometimes stuffy Nobel Prize. And along the way, the Ig Nobels have even earned the last thing that their founder ever expected, a modicum of respect. From the Science History Institute, this is Sam Keane and the Disappearing Spoon, a topsy-turvy, science-y history podcast, where footnotes become the real story. One Friday night in 1997, Andre Geim decided to have some fun. He was a physicist in Holland, and he was building an extremely powerful magnet in his lab. It consisted of a whole bunch of equipment, but the magnetic force was concentrated inside a coil of wire called a solenoid. At its peak, the magnetic force reached 16 Tesla. That is 300,000 times greater than the Earth's magnetic field. It was crazy strong. So strong that it could levitate water. Geim put a drop inside the solenoid and it floated there. Pretty trippy stuff, making water hover. Then Geim decided to push the envelope. He knew that living things are mostly water. Would they float? They did. He got a leaf to float, also a cricket. But one stunt above all captivated people. He grabbed a tiny amphibian, an inch long, and put it inside the solenoid. Presto, a levitating frog. You can probably see where this is going. Geim published the results, and a few years later the phone rang, offering him the Ig Nobel Prize. The caller was Mark Abrahams, an American software programmer in his mid-40s with a puckish side. He liked to write spoof stories about math and science. A decade earlier, he had reached out to Martin Gardner, a longtime science columnist who sometimes wrote playful pieces. Abrahams asked Gardner about outlets for his own work. Gardner mentioned an old satire publication called the Journal of Irreproducible Results from the 1950s. Abrahams thought it sounded great, so he revived the journal. It had a Mad Magazine vibe. Abrahams later left the journal to start his own publication called the Annals of Improbable Research. And along the way, Abrahams decided to hand out spoof prizes to publicize his journals. The first Ig Nobels were awarded in 1991. The roster that year was mostly Lifetime Achievement Awards. One winner was former Vice President Dan Quayle, who famously misspelled the word potato by tacking an E on the end. But Quayle also committed other gaffes. He once said, "It isn't pollution that's harming the environment. It's the impurities in our air and water." He also said, "It's time for the human race to enter the solar system." So Abrahams honored Quayle as a, quote, consumer of time and occupier of space, as well as demonstrating, better than anyone else, the need for science education. Abrahams also honored, so to speak, a longtime proponent of homeopathy and a man who argued that ancient civilizations were built by visiting alien astronauts. The Ig Nobel Peace Prize went to Edward Teller, the father of the thermonuclear bomb. Over the next few years, the prize evolved. It began highlighting actual research that simply had a silly side, like scientists who personally tested a suit of armor meant to protect against grizzly bears, or who gave Prozac to clams, or used chickens to measure the wind speed of tornadoes. A literature award honored the author of a field guide to splattered insects on car windshields. It was all in good fun. Still, Abrahams knew that winning the Ig Nobel Prize carried some stigma. Some researchers felt it trivialized their work. They got angry with Abrahams. And you can just imagine some know-nothing member of Congress fuming over a research grant that they deemed wasteful. Clams on Prozac. Time to cut their budget. So Abrahams always called the prize winners in secret before he announced the award, to give them the chance to refuse. Sure enough, Andre Geim of the Floating Frog thought seriously about saying no. He wasn't offended, but he was a young, ambitious researcher. He feared the Ig Nobel might harm his career, make him look unserious, or make it harder to win grants in the future. He consulted some mentors, and in the end, he decided, what the hell? Unlike Eleanor Maguire, he would go for it. A prize for levitating an amphibian? Why not? Geim even flew to Boston for the ceremony at Harvard. He shared the stage that year with a dozen other Ig laureates. These included a computer programmer who had built Paw Sense, software that detects when a cat is walking across your keyboard and immediately blocks any typing. A group of biochemists won for work showing that falling head over heels in love with someone is, neurologically, indistinguishable from severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. Geim had a blast. Each Ig Nobel ceremony includes some common threads and components. There are lots of silly hats, and people often dress up in costumes of mice or beavers or other creatures. The audience is encouraged to throw paper airplanes. As their prize, winners receive $10 trillion in Zimbabwean money. Due to corruption and misguided policies, Zimbabwe experienced perhaps the worst inflation in history in the mid-2000s, nearly 80% billion per month. So the government there really did print $10 trillion bills, which are worth around 4 American cents. And every Ig Nobel Prize winner gets one. To ease people's fears over accepting the prize, actual Nobel laureates, usually from Harvard or MIT, present the awards. The Nobelists even come in for some hazing. In one case, a Japanese scientist won an Ig Nobel for figuring out how to extract vanilla-flavored molecules from cow dung. The Nobel laureates were then presented, on stage, with bowls of ice cream flavored with dung-sourced molecules. They had no choice but to eat it. The ceremony always wraps up with Abraham saying, if you did not win a prize, and especially if you did, better luck next year. As the Ig Nobels have grown in fame, the stuffier folks in the scientific community have loosened up and started to appreciate them. Abrahams now gets around 9,000 nominations per year, and some scientists actually benefit from winning. Take the duck guy, Kees Moliker, an ornithologist from Holland. In 1995, the museum where he works opened up a shiny new wing with a huge glass wall. It looked great. The problem was, birds kept smashing into it and dying. Kind of ironic for a building dedicated to studying life. But it did give Moliker plenty of specimens to study. One day, a loud thump startled him. He peered down and saw a dead male mallard duck lying there. He trekked down the stairs to investigate. And he got more than he bargained for. When he arrived, he found another male duck on top of the dead one, having sex with it. Duck necrophilia. It lasted for 75 minutes. He published a paper about the incident in 2001. Obviously, it won an Ig Nobel Prize. And the prize garnered so much attention that Moliker became moderately famous. More importantly, people around the world started sending him cases of bizarre animal behavior, including more necrophilia. It's now an established, if obscure, research area, and it does make you both laugh and think. How can an animal's wiring get so messed up that it mounts something that's dead? Eleanor Maguire got a boost as well. She was the neuroscientist who studied how the hippocampus swells in taxi drivers. She turned down the prize in 2000, but Abrahams persisted and called her back in 2003. This time, she said yes. And it transformed her life. Her public profile got a big boost. In fact, if you have heard about her study before, it probably was not because of the coverage of the original research, but the hoopla from her Ig Nobel. Maguire also attended the award ceremony in Boston. She took a cab from her hotel to the auditorium, and she and the driver fell to talking. She explained her research, and the cab driver was so thrilled to hear about his big, beefy hippocampus that he refused to accept her fare. He was honored to have her. Years later, Maguire appeared on a panel with 3 actual Nobel Prize winners, but the moderator introduced her as the most famous one of the bunch. And during the Q&A afterward, nobody cared about the Nobel winners and their boring research. They wanted to know about the cab driver's brains. Maguire was thrilled. Accepting the Ig Nobel turned out to be one of the smartest career moves she ever made.
If you're a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility and your machinery isn't working right, Grainger knows you need to understand what's wrong as soon as possible. So when a conveyor motor falters, Grainger offers diagnostic tools like calibration kits and multimeters to help you identify and fix the problem. With Grainger, you can be confident you have everything you need to keep your facility running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Weight loss solutions are not one-size-fits-all. Hers makes it simpler to get started and stick with a weight loss plan, backed by expert-guided online care that puts your weight loss goals first. These include oral medication kits or compounded GLP-1 injections. Through Hers, pricing for oral medication kits start at just $69 a month for a 10-month plan when paid in full upfront. No hidden fees, no membership fees. You shouldn't have to go out of your way to feel like yourself. Hers brings expert care straight to you with 100% online access to personalized treatment plans that put your goals first. Reach your weight loss goals with help through Hers. Get started at forhers.com/4u to access affordable, doctor-trusted weight loss plans. That's forhers.com/4u, forhers.com/4u. Paid for by Hims and Hers Health. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions at forhers.com apply.
Just for fun, here is a rundown of my favorite Ig Nobel Prize winners. Ahem. One study investigated whether most people in the northern and southern hemispheres have hair that swirls in the same direction, clockwise or counterclockwise. The result, quote, counterclockwise whirls were far more frequent in the southern hemisphere. Another project was honored for, quote, exploding a paper bag next to a cat that's standing on the back of a cow to explore how and when cows spew their milk. The result? Cows produce less milk after being startled. Another study counted the nose hairs of cadavers to see which nostril tends to have more. The result? Our nostrils are equally hirsute. Other studies prove that extreme constipation does not harm the love lives of scorpions, that roller coasters can hasten the passage of kidney stones, and that Viagra can cure jet lag, at least in hamsters. My absolute favorite award involved a project to determine whether, quote, knives manufactured from frozen human feces are effective tools for skinning or butchering game. You'll have to read my book, Dinner with King Tut, to find out the answer to that one. But however silly or gross, some of this work has led to genuinely beneficial results. In 2006, a few researchers determined that malaria-spreading mosquitoes were highly attracted to stinky Limburger cheese. That same cheese that Pepe Le Pew from Looney Tunes loved. The researchers then developed traps using that odor as bait. Mosquitoes found the traps 2 to 3 times more attractive than humans. This prevented them from biting humans and spreading deadly diseases. Another experiment determined that electrified chopsticks and drinking straws can make food taste saltier. It was funny stuff. It could also provide ways to give people the pleasant sensation of saltiness while cutting back on harmful sodium in their diets. Probably the best example of work with unexpected benefits involved a study that won an Ig Nobel in 2024. In it, scientists proved that, quote, many mammals are capable of breathing through their anus. Now, that might sound like something a naughty 5th grader would dream up for his science fair project, but the researchers had done the work for the paper in 2020. During the worldwide COVID pandemic. They were trying to develop alternative ways to get oxygen to people whose lungs were failing. And again, the Ig Nobel brought attention to what could be an important treatment. If there's ever another pandemic, God forbid, this new breathing technique could save lives. Or what about this geopolitical drama? In October 1981, a Soviet submarine got stranded deep inside Swedish territorial waters. This scared the bejesus out of Sweden. The Soviets insisted that the sub had simply gotten lost and blundered into the wrong place. But the Swedes did not believe that. It seemed more likely that the Soviets were preparing to invade or attack. This fear compelled the Swedish military to mount a huge, expensive campaign to monitor their waters for Soviet subs. And throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, the Swedish Navy did detect noises that sounded suspiciously like submarines. These scares lasted until the Soviet Union collapsed. Then, in 2003, a paper on oceanography came out. It demonstrated that schools of herring, the fish, can communicate by farting at each other. Fish lack vocal cords, so when they need to yell or alert each other, they sometimes just let fly. Apparently, it can get quite noisy. Again, this was an obvious project to win an Ig Nobel Prize, and you can probably guess where this is going. Herring are common in the waters around Sweden, and when this research came out, the Swedish military slapped its forehead. They hadn't been tracking dastardly Soviet subs. They'd been tracking herring flatulence for years, at the cost of tens of millions of dollars. Even that stunt with the levitating frog proved to have real-world benefits. As you might know, China has ambitions to land human beings on the moon, and it's been sending rovers there. To help test equipment for the missions, Chinese scientists developed a small simulation chamber that mimics the moon's lower gravity. It works through magnets, and was directly inspired by Andre Geim's floating frog. Oh, and incidentally, accepting the Ig Nobel did not harm Geim's career. Far from it. He now works in England as Sir Andre Geim. Why the Sir? Because a few years after his frog experiment, on another late Friday night in the lab, he was goofing around again and pulled another stunt. He stuck a piece of tape to some graphite and peeled it off. A black, microscopically thin layer of graphite stuck to the tape. And just for kicks, Geim and a colleague decided to investigate the layer's properties. In doing so, they discovered graphene. It's now considered something of a wonder material. Its incredible strength and high conductivity could revolutionize electronics and material science. A few years later, Geim got another phone call about a prize for this work. But not for Mark Abrahams. This one was from Stockholm. Geim had won an actual Nobel Prize. And to this day, he remains the one scientist in history to collect both the most important hardware and the silliest in all of science. This is the Disappearing Spoon podcast, brought to you by the Science History Institute. Be sure to check out their in-depth science history podcast, Distillations. You can find it anywhere you get your podcasts or on their website, distillations.org. You can find more incredible stories in my books or at samkeen.com. You can also book me as a speaker there for your school or event. If you like this podcast, please spread the word and support it at patreon.com/disappearingspoon. You can also get bonus episodes and signed books at Patreon. This episode was written by me, Sam Keen. It was produced by Mariel Carr, Rigoberto Hernandez, and Sarah Kaplan. Our sound design, scoring, and mixing is by Row Home Productions. Row Home's creative director is Alex Lewis. John Myers is Row Home's executive producer. Thanks for listening.
Row Home Productions.
If you're a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility and your machinery isn't working right, Grainger knows you need to understand what's wrong as soon as possible. So when a conveyor motor falters, Grainger offers diagnostic tools like calibration kits and multimeters to help you identify and fix the problem. With Grainger, you can be confident you have everything you need to keep your facility running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Do you know that the human brain only uses carbs and ketones for fuel? Or that we have 27 bones in each wrist and hand? I'm Dr. Steve Sullivan, professor of anatomy and physiology for 23 years, and if the human body interests you, listen to my podcast, Anatomy and Physiology Bit by Bit, rated the #1 A&P podcast on the internet. If you're an A&P student or just want to learn about the human body without all the misinformation from social media, this is the podcast for you. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get podcasts.